Some of you were here the night that the tornado struck, and of course we couldn't see anything because the power was out citywide. And then the next morning when we were all able to see the devastation, it was really quite a shock. Of course, the mayor and the sheriff and the firemen and all the first responders sprang into action without regard to their own needs, looking out for the needs of their fellow Wessington Springs residents. And I'm so proud of the way that others in South Dakota and really even in North Dakota have responded to come here and help. I met people today at the Red Cross Center from Mitchell, from Sioux Falls, from Rapid City, from Huron, from places in North Dakota. We have help here from the Salvation Army, from the Adventists. Of course, many state agencies are here. The Division of Insurance is helping people interpret their insurance availability and the language of their insurance policies. We have people here from South Dakota Housing Authority, being sure that people are aware of low interest loans that are available to them, helping people identify whether they qualify for the governor's house. We have one home builder, a modular home builder from South Dakota is offering their homes at a very reduced rate to Wessington Springs residents. And I know that many people here are displaced from their homes. We did have a chance to tour the damaged area and see, of course, many homes that were very significantly damaged have already been demolished and cleared from the sites. In some cases, the tornado had cleared a house from the site, which is an indicator of the strength of the storm. But even in the face of that damage, you still see great resilience. At the 4-H building where the Red Cross is serving many, many thousands of meals, I met a family, a father and 4 children were there, and the 2 girls were playing softball when the tornado struck. And of course, they immediately, upon hearing the horns, jumped in the car to head home for safety. And the oldest girl said, "No, Dad, we can't go home. We need to go over to my friend's house because her parents are gone and she and her brother or sister are home alone." So they did go over to their friend's house, and they went down in the basement, and the dad literally put the kids underneath himself and held them down as the tornado struck. And so it's stories like that where people are thinking of others before themselves, and in the aftermath, thinking of others before themselves. That is what makes me proud to be governor of a state like South Dakota. Today, we're going to be sending a group of inmates to help sort through lots of lots of donated items. For your viewers or listeners, I guess I would encourage gifts of money. The bank, help me, Mayor.
American Bank and Trust.
American Bank and Trust has established funds for affected victims. I think the Red Cross also has funds, but I encourage donations of money. The volume of donated things is almost becoming a burden. So many clothes, so many toys, so many blankets, and in many cases the donations surpass the need. Whereas donations of dollars can help a family make up their deductible if insurance, and we know there are some families who did not have insurance. So I really encourage South Dakotans to help where they can with financial gifts because I know it will be very much appreciated. Questions?
What are your thoughts on the cleanup so far?
The cleanup is very impressive. I was saying as we came in, as we left the last time I was here, of course there was debris scattered everywhere, in the parks, in the cemetery, the golf course fields around Wessington Springs, and there are still some areas where you can see debris. But in many of those public areas, especially, the debris is completely gone, and you can't tell that the tornado was here at all. So for that, I'm grateful to volunteers and others who helped clean up and make Wessington Springs the neat community that it's always been, and restore that neat looking area. In some cities in America, what we saw after the tornado is what's the norm. in the debris and litter that you see. But that's not South Dakota. We like our spaces neat and clean, and Wessington Springs is no different.
You know, for many of the officials, this is kind of their first tornado that they've, had to go through and kind of be there for their community, and I think they're doing a great job. But what do you think has worked well best, this past week?
I think we've really got some good local leadership here in Wessington Springs. The mayor stepped right up. In fact, I've got a number of pictures I'm going to email the mayor of her in action on the night of the tornado, and the sheriff and the sheriff's deputy and the chief of the fire department. They were all right there on the job, and some of them had been affected themselves personally by the tornado, the mayor herself. We went to her home. That's uninhabitable now, and so even in the face of personal damage and personal problems with material goods, still they were on the job helping their fellow citizens.
What has stood out the most during this, recovery in the past week?
I think the dramatic change in the look, the debris and broken houses and garages that were destroyed was spread everywhere. And when the light came that first morning after the tornado, it was a mess. It was a terrible mess. And now the citizens of Wessington Springs, with volunteer help and help from the National Guard, and help from the Department of Transportation, they've stepped up and cleaned up. And Wessington Springs, you can definitely see lots of damage still, but Wessington Springs looks a lot better. And that's because the community just got right to work.
Look,
Go ahead.
Governor, from what you've heard from the community, did they have adequate warning as the tornado was bearing down so they could take action?
I think that is the fact that the warning was so good here contributed to the safety of the citizens. I'm told that the first responders in this community can activate the tornado horn by radio. And so even though they may not have been on site where a hard switch is located, they can activate that switch remotely, and did so. And so there were people on the golf course playing. As I mentioned, there were girls' softball games going on. People were out and about. It was a beautiful night. I read in the paper, there were people out grilling. And it's a beautiful summer night, and then suddenly it turned very dangerous. And the fact that we had a very good alarm given with time to react and get to safe quarters, I'm sure contributed to the safety of Wessington Springs citizens.
Can I touch a little bit on the morale of town? When we talk with people, everybody is willing to explain what happened, that half of their house was ripped off, and then they say, but this guy has it worse. But we just got to pull together and figure it out. And you can talk to them, but is that what you hear too? And what's that indicative of?
I think I am hearing people talk about others before themselves. And that again is a mark of character, where people are most concerned about the others and more so than about themselves. It just is the mark of good character. And I'm hearing about the difficulty people still feel. Certainly it was a very frightening time for many people. The sounds and sights are, I'm sure, indelibly burned in their memory. It'll affect children for a while, I'm sure. I was talking to the mayor, and she said when the power went out this week, her 4-year-old son started to shake because he thought it meant another repetition of that very frightening night when the tornado came, and she had to reassure him, no, just because the power's out doesn't mean a tornado's coming. We're fine, and we're safe. So it's something that parents will have to help their children through over the next weeks and months, and probably something that will never be forgotten.
I guess touching on that, it's been a crazy past week for weather, and it's still summer, and that is possible that more severe weather could come through here. Does that scare you at all for what that could mean for these people?
Yeah, certainly June in South Dakota is always a time of turbulent weather. When you talk about when do the tornadoes come, well, this is tornado time in South Dakota. It's been a while since we've had a tornado strike an inhabited community like it struck Wessington Springs. It just reminds us of the force of nature and the power of tornado force winds. And it also reminds us to be careful and not forget and not be cavalier about those horns when they sound. We really do need to take shelter, because you can only make the mistake once of not taking shelter when you should have, and it might be the last time you make that mistake.
Looking down the road, what do you think is going to be, kind of the most difficult thing, moving forward?
I think for Wessington Springs, the most difficult thing will be the individual decisions of the homeowners whose homes have become uninhabitable. Judging how much they should reinvest into a home that's partially damaged, but not completely uninhabitable. Judging whether to reinvest in a brand new structure. Will they have enough dollars to rebuild or to buy a modular home, or what? I hope that the citizens will spend time understanding the options available to them. We have in town here a multi-agency resource center that's been open, and I know a number of people whose homes were damaged or destroyed have visited with the Housing Development Authority. But we have, as I say, governor's homes. They are very high quality homes. I took a personal interest in upgrading the quality of our governor's home. We bought blower doors to improve our air tightness. Nobody likes to live in a leaky home when the wind is blowing and it's 20 below. And so our governor's house is now very airtight, and we'll use heat recovery air exchangers to introduce fresh air into the home in a controlled way that provides good fresh air but recovers the heat of the exiting air, so you save money. The windows are improved, the doors are improved. It's really a very excellent home for the value. And both 2 and 3 bedroom models are available. I hope people will look at whether their low income qualifies for the home, because if they do, it is really a very good deal.
What is the state currently doing to help these people, either financially or just whatever they may need, getting back on their feet?
Well, I was talking to the mayor as we are moving around town about the city budget, and of course, like all cities, there's some projects that were on the drawing board, maybe for water or sewer or utility management, and she was concerned about maybe some of those projects are going to have to be put on hold because now the dollars that were going to be spent on those might be needed to restore some damaged areas. And one of the things I'd like to look at with her is whether the state's water and sewer funds and also our community development block grant dollars might in some cases help provide the dollars for those kinds of major municipal projects, and then it still would make dollars freed up for the city to use to restore some of the damages that they have to restore. So on a larger scale, that's where I think the state can help. On an individual level, of course, we're working with FEMA. We have FEMA estimators here in town today, and they're going house by house and evaluating the damage. They're looking at public infrastructure and evaluating the damage toward a request of the president to make a disaster declaration. And then we'll also hope for individual assistance. Now, that would be unusual. It's hard to get individual assistance. Even if the president does declare a disaster, usually what that means is there's dollars to help fix roads that were damaged, fix the parks, put up the utility poles again, those kinds of expenses that have been incurred for public infrastructure. Generally, there's no dollars available for private, unless you've got, and it's just a rough rule of thumb, about 100 homes. Well, we don't have 100 homes here, but because this tornado is part of a weather system that moved from west to east, flooding in the northwest, where one woman was washed off the road, and I don't think her body's been found yet, but we believe she has been lost. Then it moved through the central part of the state and then moved still eastward, and that weather pattern has created a lot of the flooding that's occurred in the east as well. And our hope is to make the case to FEMA that this is all one disaster statewide, and then we can aggregate the Wessington Springs individual damage with the Canton basements that collapsed and other things that made significant individual property damage occur in other parts of the state. And if that is the case, then possibly there might be some disaster dollars available for individuals. I must also add, though, that those dollar amounts are not a panacea. We're not looking at $10,000 and $20,000 and $30,000. We're looking at probably on average $2,000 or $3,000 maybe, and maybe not even that. So it's something. Everything helps. We hope people will contribute to the disaster relief fund here in Wessington Springs, and that will help. We hope that the Governor's House availability and some of these other things that the Red Cross is doing and Salvation Army and the Adventists are doing will help. And all those things added up, many drops make an ocean. And we're hoping to lift all the boats here.
I jumped in late here, so I'm sure this is one of the first things that you guys touched on, but you were here right after the storm hit last week. Did you think it would come this far in just a week's time?
I am very impressed with the tremendous progress that has been made. As I said earlier, when I got here, it was pitch black. We had generator power here at the fire hall. There were a few other remote spots, individual spots. I think the hospital had generator power. There might have been one or two other places, but otherwise the city was absolutely dark. And aside from some emergency light panels at the intersection and maybe a couple other places. So the next morning when I got up and was able, when light came and I was able to see what had happened, of course it was just, it was a mess. It was a complete mess. And Wessington Springs has really stepped up and cleaned up, and there's still obvious areas of damage that need to be addressed, but so much work has been done so quickly. I'm very impressed. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for your support to this community.